right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, May 13th, 2024. If I had the ability to post safe from all the solar storms of 2024, I would do that, but I didn't see a meme of that sort. But hey, good news, we're all safe, right? We'll get into a little bit about that here in a minute. Let's go over our current solar stats. Right now, the J Helio viewer that I usually grab the SDO motion from is down. None of the angstroms are working, so this is what I got. Sorry. Solar wind speeds coming in at 568 kilometers per second with a density of 2.42. And we will actually move this image to space weather here just in a minute. Take a look at the sunspots, because right now we have 186 and it's starting to get crowded once again on Earth-facing side of the sun. KP indices right now are coming in at a 2 or 24-hour max of 6, so much lower than what we were going through over the weekend. We saw KP of 9, which is a G5. Earlier in the last 24 hours, we've been at a KP 6, which is only a geomagnetic. That's a G2, second to the weakest solar storm possible. There is still a 40% chance of X-class flares, and we'll show you the image of the sunspots that could be responsible for that, but still impressive. Our 24-hour stats show that we have had an M-class 1 flare, so the 3664 is turning away from Earth, and we are not going to see the impact of these solar flares from that particular giant region there. So let's go ahead and take a look at our space weather pages here. This is Space Weather Live. That's some brief stats here. Solar wind speeds hanging around the 580s. Let's see if we can get some pictures of our star here. There we go. So as you can see, we'll click on the main sunspot image here, the latest and greatest. And we are quite busy. Like, as I said, we were looking at sunspot number 186. Pardon me. 186, that's a smooth number, but look at all these sunspots, folks. And over here is going to be where we're possibly going to see some real action again. 3664 is now gone, but we are starting to see some consistency. These sunspots are getting closer together in the bands. Again, I always thought that sunspots in the middle part of the sun was the maximum. And I also was told, or one of the ways that you can tell if we've peaked or not, is you go off of the highest X flare that you had during the cycle, and that's when you can locate the peak. I know there's a few other ways to also find this, but if we had to go off of some of the traditional ways that we find the peak, technically right now we're not done with the peak, especially if we're seeing X-class flares of 5.8, G5 storms as well, and those are very severe. But we'll talk more about that as well, because there's a lot to say when it comes to what we went through this weekend and how it was perceived. In fact, it's kind of it's a bit on the shameful side for some personalities out there who really went and ran with this in a weird direction. And I'll tell you, let's just get right into it. Oh, before we do that, for all of you folks out there that follow asteroids, this one's pretty close. Asteroid 2024 JN16 to fly past Earth at a very close distance of 0.06 lunar distance on May 14th. So interesting. And right now, the timing of this asteroid, after what we just went through over the weekend, and the reason I think that we're seeing these asteroids getting closer and closer, we were just proved how weak our magnetosphere actually is right now. And one of the ways we know that our magnetosphere is weaker is by the cosmic ray dosage rates, which are at negative 10%. And those are minimum readings, guys. That's a good reading for a spotless day. -10%, -11%. That's where we were consistently when we had 0 sunspots. So the solar wind was very strong at 958 kilometers per second and pretty much pushed in a lot more cosmic rays into our atmosphere than usual because of these speeds. In other words, our cosmic ray dosage rates were basically forced from the incoming CMEs, if I can talk tonight, with the particles that came with that solar wind. So our magnetosphere did not hold up very good when we have and the cosmic radiation dosage rates yesterday were as high as 12%, 12.5. 12.5. I think we got to 11.7 and 11.8 a couple different times um, during our minimum, during the part of the minimum where we saw zero action, lots of coronal holes. And solar wind speeds were coming in at 600 kilometers per second. So imagine that now. The weaker magnetosphere still gave us decent geomagnetic storms because the magnetosphere was weaker. But here we are at maximum. And we get this strong X class flare, 5.8. And it causes all these beautiful auroras all over the country. But then when your good friends like David Birch out there from the UK sends you a couple of fact-finding pieces, and you see where we were 21 years ago, and I can't believe I let this slip under my nose, but let's go right into it. This proves so much. So everybody knows about the solar storms that we experienced October of 2003. Now, I had made a post on Twitter that talked about I've never observed solar wind speeds at 990 kilometers per second. And folks, I haven't. I've only been doing this for 8 years. So that was a fair and true statement. But I also thought that these were pretty impressive speeds. Turns out, back in October 29th and 30th in 2003, solar wind speeds were at 1850 kilometers per second. That's right, twice as hard as what we saw from this previous storm. Now, it was known that we had 5 CMEs from X-class flares that were back to back to back to back to back. We just got pummeled by an X-class 1, an X-class 2, X-class 3, and X-class 4, 5, and then this last one that we got impact from on the the 12th, the 5.8. Our maximum solar wind speed was 990 kilometers per second, with a density of around 27 at peak when this first hit the magnetosphere. Now, again, that kind of solar wind is strong, but when you compare it to what we just had 21 years ago, and guys, 21 years is not that long ago. Think about it. Do you remember any major grid damage in 2021? And we would have heard about it. We were home locked down from COVID stuff, right? I'm sorry, this is 2003. Whoa, back up. Sorry, not 2021. 2003. All right, 21 years ago. All right. And the truth of the matter is, yeah, if it wasn't 2021, I'm sure it would be relevant. But 2003, it was right after 9/11. We didn't really measure or have websites that were out there that were, educating folks about, solar activity. I don't think that really came out until, the 2010s and up. So I apologize for getting the years mixed up. So 2003, we had an X20 something. Where is it at? There's the exact solar flares. Embarrassing. I had 2 articles, but I took one down. I can't remember the exact strength of these X flares, but one was like a 24 or 25. The second one was like a 46, X46. All right, now this was 2003. There were reports of some power outages in, I think, Sweden or Finland, one of those two. And we had some other satellite issues as well, but that's it. No deaths reported, no fires, no major damage, nothing that would have popped out and said, whoa, we got to watch out for this sun thing. And that was a storm that was way worse when it comes to solar wind, twice as hard of solar wind speeds in 2003 versus now. Now, it proves more of what we have been educating you on. 2003 X-class flares were way stronger than what we're seeing them right now in the maximum here in 2024. That's first and foremost, okay? Nothing near an X-class 47, okay? That's what we were talking about on, there was two of them, a 25 and a 47 X-class flares, back-to-back on the 29th and the 30th. And it brought these massive G5 storms. Now, we know that our X-class flares didn't break 6. And even though we had 5 back-to-back-to-back, it still did not even come close to the strength of X-class flares that we saw back in 2003. So, number one, this proves that this solar cycle is showing a weaker sun. The output of the sun right now, if this is considered still peak activity, and our X-class peak is at X5.8, and we know the minimum is going to be poking its head around here soon. The proof is when you look at SDO and see how many sunspots are traveling towards the center. Now, the reason why this is also a significant article here talks about previous high-speed events that include the Carrington event, the first solar flare ever observed with a transit time of 17.5 hours. Now, previously, they were talking about, right here, actually, there are several transit times of 25 hours that corresponded with speeds at 1,650 kilometers per second. So think about that for a minute. If the Carrington event arrived in about 8 hours less of a speed that was at 1,650 in a 25-hour arrival time, it's possible that the Carrington event carried solar wind speeds somewhere around 2,200 to 2,500 kilometers per second. Just to give you a ball, I'm not saying these are exact, but this is ballpark. This is what the Carrington event brought. An X-class flare that was well over the 50s. I believe it was somewhere a low 60, maybe it was 57. Somebody in the chat, I'm sure, knows what it is. But my point is that the solar flare in 1859 was several times larger than what we faced this weekend. And I thought I'd bring this up because I know a lot of people were impressed with the auroras and the G5 and how, even at the end of 2016 and 17, I don't remember geomagnetic storms going that high, And so most of you are thinking, well, we're not in the grand solar minimum because we had a G5 severe. No, that's not true either. Because we're still showing you that the output of the sun is weaker than what it was in 2003. And just look at cycle 23 and 24. They were much stronger cycles. The sunspot activity in 23 and 24 was a lot more, especially 23. So, stronger solar cycles, stronger output from the sun in 2003. Fast forward 21 years later, which I want to point out, by the way, too, folks. Ironically, we're seeing this almost exactly 22 years, which gives us a full 2 solar cycles of data. And the real solar cycle is flipping once and then flipping again to make it 22 years. Even though we measure them in 11-year cycles, technically they're 22-year long cycles because they have to flip on and then flip all the way around again. But anyway, another episode for that. So everything happens on a cycle. And the last time that we had this, we had a much stronger sun, we had a much stronger cycle, and we had a much stronger magnetic field. Because think about this. An X-47 should have taken out some grids. And it did in Sweden or Finland, one of the two, and had some damage elsewhere, but nothing major. But because this happened, I believe this happened right around, I think it was still in the maximum, 2003. Because the minimum starts around 07, 09, the peak of it. Anyway, thankfully, the sun was in a maximum, of course. That's the only time that kind of power happens. But the magnetosphere was still stronger at that point. Now, flash forward 21 years later, magnetosphere is definitely weaker than what it was in solar cycle 23. And that's why we saw such an abundance of cosmic radiation. Dosage rates go way up. That's why we saw the aurora stretch out across the southern part of the United States. But what you noticed that didn't happen was power lines catching on fire, transformers blowing up spontaneously, power grids being damaged, people who didn't unplug their computers having damage to their computers. None of that happened. None of that happened. I don't know why it was being reported to watch out for it. Because after reading this document here, talking about previous solar storms, which is not the strongest in history, obviously the Carrington event, that one holds the crown that we know of. In 2003, the storm was relevant, and we had all this technology, and still we survived it in a maximum, but during a time when the magnetosphere was stronger. Now, 21 years later, heading into this next grand solar minimum, Zarkova and others have talked about the weaker magnetosphere. Okay. John Casey talked about it all the time. Willie Soon talks about our magnetosphere continuing to lose its strength even during the maximum. Zarkova said it. Many other solar physicists are now coming around and saying that we are witnessing a weaker magnetosphere, and we're also looking at weaker output for the sun. And here's where Jake's going to go a little rogue right now, but why do you think they stopped allowing us to look at the TSI daily? I've even reached out to people who specialize in research in TSI, and nobody has gotten back to me yet about how to monitor daily TSI. Nobody. They won't even answer. No, not even a, hey, nice to hear from you. Give me some time on that. Or, maybe they do have a site and they have to keep it close to their chest because they don't want to risk losing access again to monitoring this. And what I mean by this is I feel like our channel and a couple others out there were paying attention to TSI, and we were showing everyone how it's going to drop. And that was the ultimate, okay, we are definitely falling into a lower period of solar activity. And then mysteriously in February, was it 21, 22, something like that? All of a sudden we can't monitor this information anymore. Because the drop would probably shock a lot of folks. And then it brings you back to that whole topic of, well, why are we seeing warmer temperatures? Well, thank you, Tonga. Tonga, and I was talking to Mari about this, but Tonga might have gave us a little bit of a buffer to what's to come. Thankfully, Tonga went off and put a record amounts of moisture and water vapor into our atmosphere, an amount we have that's unprecedented, that's in the atmosphere. So maybe this was a blessing from the universe that it's going to warm up a little bit before we get real cold. That's not a bad thing to have a good buffer right now. And then once the GSM kicks in, which it's a decadal cycle, guys, it takes time. It builds in slowly, and that's why it lasts for several decades. This cycle does just not happen overnight. It's not a flip of the switch, and it doesn't mean it's over when we see X 5.8 class flares. Those are nothing compared to the severe ones that actually cause the damage. If we knew that there was an X57 or X60 or X80 that, oh, you're going to hear about it. In fact, your response time is going to be a lot less than a regular X-class flare because of how big it was. So imagining getting an 80, if it took 17 and a half hours for the 57 to arrive back in 1859, imagine how quick an 80 would get to us. Probably 12 hours or less. But that's plenty of time, right? Once the alert gets out, people can put their Faraday cages up, and that's plenty of time to shut the breakers off. That's when you see those alerts. But nobody anywhere can tell you that unless they work directly for NASA or SDO or whatever the other research companies are out there that monitor the stuff. Because I've seen so many people who are so-called experts claim they know what's going on and then say some things that probably shouldn't have been said, causing anxiety, causing people to be a little fearful, and maybe some unnecessary prepping, panic buying. It's not healthy. We live in a world these days where we have enough of that to worry about. We don't need any more hype or hysteria made up about things that just aren't as big as folks think they are. And I'm not here to poop on anybody's parade here. I'm sorry if you get off on this kind of stuff. I'm sorry if this kind of, gets your everything going for you. But I'm here to tell you that we have to be responsible with this kind of information, because there's a story out there called The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And that's what I'm worried about is going to happen, because we have all these people out there making these sensational claims. And then there's other folks who sit on the other side of the fence who are waiting to debunk this topic. And they pounce on these other channels for saying these sensational claims when they know damn well it's not true. It's not true. So this was to open up some eyes tonight, this broadcast, to show you guys that, yes, we had a very beautiful geomagnetic storm. It might have caused things like headaches and anxiety and heart palpitations. That was the most serious effect of this particular geomagnetic storm, because it was so severe. But as far as damaging our technology, you can Google it right now, guys. There is nothing out there that is showing a fire because of the storms, or an outage, or a transformer, or a grid shut down. Lisa Ann Hart says, yes, volcanoes. I'm very curious if more volcanoes are going to pop, like big Indonesia. There was one today for 21,000 feet with the ash plume, but again, we all know what 21,000 feet is. That's nothing. It's a volcano erupting, beautiful ash plume, but it's not stratospheric, and we all know that stratospheric volcano eruptions are what affects the climate. Tonga was rumored to hit 120,000 feet into the stratosphere, and a gigantic eruption that it was. I mean, think about that, folks. Tonga was an underwater volcano that erupted ash plume 120,000 feet into the air. Imagine if this thing wasn't underwater. So the moisture, the water vapor that was carried in the atmosphere, that was made from the ocean. That was not just water droplets came out of a volcanic ash. This water vapor was being pushed into the atmosphere from this powerful blast. Yeah. Eli and Wolverine State. Storm was bigger in 03. And the facts are right there, folks. Again, I want to thank David Birch, our friend out there in the UK, Starman. He's the one that kind of commented on my tweet that I had about um, this was the most impressive solar wind I've ever observed, 958. And I just simply did not have the knowledge that we had solar wind speeds that were twice as fast. And it might have been um, way faster with the Carrington. We could be talking about 2,200 to 2,500 kilometers per second because of the arrival time of 17 and a half versus one that arrives in 22 and a half hours and it's 1,600 kilometers per second. So I'm just doing an educated guess here. A year without a summer could happen if we had an eruption of like Tonga that wasn't underwater. I believe that would have been, yes, probably our first year without a summer. But yeah, Mari brings up a good point as well. Yes, but on a regional, depending on the jet stream and almost a phenomenon, an atmospheric phenomena. Yes, that heart's in the wave. That's what she said. Okay. Imran, the G5 storm did not produce any effects, possibly because the solar wind speed was too fast from ranging. Again, the solar wind speeds of 700 to 900 kilometers is nothing. Compared to the solar storm of 2003, those solar winds were around 1850 kilometers per second. That's 1850 kilometers per second. So again, the wind speeds were not too fast. These were just intense. That's how I would describe these solar wind speeds. And this is more proof that the sun's output is getting weaker. Why aren't we seeing 1,800 kilometers per second now than we were 21 years ago? It's obvious. The sun's weaker. 21 years ago, we had two solar flares. One was an X25 and the other one was like an X47. This year, we had an X39 and an X45 that started off this G5 storm. So, weaker output. And with the weaker output storm, it still inundated Earth's atmosphere with cosmic ray dosage rates of negative 12% as of yesterday. Today, they're still at 10, negative 10, double digits. These are readings we get in the minimum. So this shows us that even during a solar max, when you have this kind of cosmic radiation dosage coming in, it also shows us that the magnetosphere is also weak. So we have weak output, which shows the weak magnetic field. Again, strong sun, stronger magnetosphere, weak sun, weaker magnetosphere. But even during a maximum, it's not enough strength. And it's starting to show us that. It's not protecting very good against cosmic rays. And it sure as hell ain't protecting us very good for stuff like this. I believe our magnetosphere is part of the reason why some of these asteroids, they don't come near us because of that. Because we've always had a strong magnetosphere that would help bounce these things out of orbit for us. Change the trajectory a little bit. So, again, I'm not saying go out and panic buy, get toilet paper and hot dogs and all that crap. But if you're wondering why we're starting to see these asteroids getting closer to Earth, well, the proof is out there. Weaker output from the sun equals weaker magnetosphere for Earth, weaker magnetic connection. Weaker magnetosphere is also not as strong to repel these asteroids and near Earth objects. This one's close. This one's pretty damn close. I don't think I've ever seen one this close, honestly. Again, I hope I'm corrected and there was one way closer than that, but this is very close. I want to say hello to our friend Matthew Bros. Good to see you out there in the chat, my friend. Long time no see. Rebecca H. Jimmy, good to have you on the show as well. Lisa, thank you for participating. Eli in the Wolverine state. Hello, Under the Tornado. Melody, thank you for tuning in once again. I don't think you've missed us once since we've come back on the air. This is like our third live show. in the last 4 days, and that's probably a new record for us compared to how we've been for the last couple of years. But with so much going on, guys, lots to talk about, lots to go over, lots to still educate about certain things. Hello, Patricia. Good to have you out there as well. One of our trusted um, mods, Matthew McDonald, a Twitter follower as well. Sevi Fuco, I like the name. Arnold Schmidt, hello to you, sir. How are you? Many, many others out there, guys. I appreciate the support. It's Monday night. We still got a pretty good, decent showing. Over the weekend, you guys really showed us in numbers. Whoa, Matt. Woo! Thank you very much, sir. That helps. That helps keep this channel going like this too. I guess that new job is doing pretty good for you there, huh, buddy? Matt has a very a successful position just because he's a very smart farmer and was able to cash in with all those years of hard work in those fields. And now he is basically he's the guru of of lending for farmers and all that kind of stuff going on in his field because he did it for so many years. So other financial institutes trust Matt's opinion, they trust his knowledge and wisdom, and so do his customers. So just a great story from that guy where he went from being a farmer working in the field all the time, and now, he's got a nice change of pace out there, and I'm proud of him. But thanks for the donation. Sorry I'm going on about your personal life out here, but that's a big celebration, dude. No more financial officer. That's fancy. See, me and Matt, we could form our GSM bank now. So he's a financial officer, and I'm a branch manager of a bank. So I'm a banker. Anyway, just kidding. No, I'm not. Okay, I'm not. All right, guys. Well, listen. I think that's going to conclude our show tonight. I want to thank everybody for your support. Thank you for tuning in to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We are probably going to do a show tomorrow night. I know that's always the kiss of death, but lots to go over. So yes, we will continue to do daily updates. 5 days a week should be good enough, right? Unless there's something crazy going on. But that's what we want to get back to, guys. 5 daily shows a week, live broadcast. Love having the chat. Thank you again, Matt, for the donation. Very, very much appreciated. Vert Caver, good to see you in here as well. And just, it feels good to see you guys again. And a lot of you are loyal. Like, we've been very inconsistent for several years. And it makes me proud to know that we got a good group of people out here who actually give a damn about what's going on, but in a sensible way, not this craziness out there. So we love you out there, GSM family. Thank you guys again, and we will talk soon, guys. Take care out there.